Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, where we provide you with your weekly diagnosis of everything fantasy football. Whether it's season-long leagues, dynasty, DFS, or sometimes even IDP, we got you covered all year long. Let's do it. Let's get to it. Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast. Good morning. Happy Friday, October 4th, 2024. I'm your host, Jon Jeune, at the real Jon J _FF. And obviously it is Friday, our matchup show, week 5 matchup show. Hopefully you guys have had a good week thus far. Now, we did obviously the waiver show on Tuesday. Last Friday show was not live, but it is live today. I appreciate y'all bearing with me. I was on a trip, and so therefore had to do something a little different last week, which was pre-record the Friday show. So forgive me if anything wasn't 100% accurate in terms of where a guy's ECR was, or maybe even some things as related to injuries and opportunities. Like I know Jon Jennings, I think, was on the list last week, and Deebo Samuel, for example, ended up playing. It was questionable whether he would play or not. So, things like that. But I appreciate y'all rocking with me. In terms of last week's show, just want to highlight what happened there. We had two guys. I guess one guy who beat their ECR by 10 spots, and another guy who, Brian Thomas Jr. beat his ECR by 10 spots, finishing as a wide receiver 9. Garrett Wilson, he did not beat his ECR, which was kind of what we had talked about, right? He was the ECR wide receiver 12. We talked about him being a guy that probably going to finish, outside that top 12. Not a lot of confidence that he would have finished inside that top 20. So he finishes the wide receiver 60. So that's two big hits there. George Pickens ended up being a hit, finished as the wide receiver 24 after being ranked as 26. Bucky Irving, a hit, finishes the running back 23 after being ranked the running back 29. Deshaun Watson, we're not really going to claim that. Thought he could have had a bigger day there after finishing, being ranked as the quarterback 25, being ranked as the quarterback 19. Tony Pollard, who, continues to be a hit for us almost every week, finished as the running back 14 after being ranked as the running back 21. But after that, that was pretty much all that she wrote. We had outside of those 6 guys, there were 10 guys who we missed on, right? So Jackson Smith-Njigba finishes the wide receiver 32 after being ranked 25. Khalil Shakir 47 after being ranked 34. T. Higgins 37 after being ranked 29. Derek Carr 26 after being ranked 18. Romeo Doubs 54 after being ranked 47. Tyler Conklin 21 after being ranked 16. And then we had some big misses in terms of Roma Dunze finished 93 after being ranked 33. Jon Jennings 38 after being ranked 28. Michael Wilson 72 after being ranked 54. And then Carson Steele, just an absolute whiff there, that for week 4 was the running back 107 as he had negative points after being ranked 28. So not the best week, guys. So, I definitely, I strive and I aim to be better than that. But I'm in the trenches with you. Carson Steele was in my lineups as well. I felt the pain there as well. So, we're going to keep it rocking. Hopefully week 5 is much better than week 4. And, like I said to you guys back in week 1, and we touched on last week, now that this week is getting, now that we have more information, we're getting a better idea of some of these matchups and some of these guys' roles and how the coaching staffs are starting to use them. We are understanding some of these guys that are being ranked inside their respective thresholds at their positions, and maybe those are guys that we want to maybe avoid or lessen expectations for. We're gonna get more of those this week. I know last week we had one in Garrett Wilson. I think on this week's list we've got a couple. So gonna jump right into it. But before we do that, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed to the Twitch stream or the X stream. Make sure you are tapped into the podcast platforms wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Play. Also, make sure if you are watching on IG that you turn those notifications on. Trying to do something a little different with the timing on the IG live. So obviously on Instagram, you won't see this live. You'll see a pre-recorded version of it, but you'll see it in two places on my personal Instagram account at @therealJonJ_FF. You'll also see it on the show's Instagram account at FFDiagnostics. And we'll try to do that at 12 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Eastern. So give you guys two opportunities there to watch it on IG Live if you, for whatever reason, you prefer to watch it, a stream of it, on Instagram, and you're trying to figure out, hey, when does it come out? We're trying to commit to 12 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Eastern there. So, trying something new, but let me know what you guys think. And then another question that came up was, talking about guys that, maybe we see as drop candidates. And, for me, I love doing that. I have no problem doing that. But what I think is helpful is, for those of you that do watch the show live, happen to watch the show live, pop in the comment section. It's better to work with some real life scenarios, because I don't roster every player, so I'm not necessarily keen to every single player, every single scenario that players are dealing with. So if you have questions, concerns about a particular player, drop those in the comment section, specifically during the waiver show. And we'll get those answered the best that we can in a timely fashion. So definitely would love to see that. Or hey, you know what? If you have some, if you have access to obviously social media, send the questions for on the Tuesday show and through the DMs, right? You could DM me, you could tweet at me if you're on X, but you could send DMs on Instagram or X as well. You could drop, if you want to drop comments in the YouTube section before the show, because maybe that you're going to watch it, but you can't watch it live, but you'd like your question answered. Just drop it there, and we'll do our best to get your question answered while we're here live on the air. So without further ado, guys, let's just jump into the Week 5 matchup show, starting with this first game, the London game, the New York Jets against the Minnesota Vikings, a Sam Darnold revenge game part deux. And there's some guys you feel like maybe you should just leave them alone, reaching that point in the season, but I don't know. We'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens. New York Jets tight end Tyler Conklin. I know, man. I know, guys. Last week did not come through. 2 weeks, I think week 1 we tried to go there, did not come through. It just, again, feels like I'm reaching a point in the season where there's some guys that should just leave him alone. And I think if Conklin doesn't come through around this time, I'll probably leave him alone for some time. But we even though he was terrible last week in terms of the fantasy output, he still saw 8 targets last week, and that's after seeing 9 targets the week before. Minnesota has allowed the most PPR points to opposing tight ends over their last 3 games. And it also happens to be a revenge game for Tyler Conklin, if you believe in those narratives, right? I mean, everyone's talking about the Sam Darnold revenge game, but Tyler Conklin revenge game, just saying. But yeah, so I all jokes aside, I do like Conklin this week. 17 targets at the tight end position over the last 2 weeks. It's not really something to sneeze at there. So, definitely am open to playing Tyler Conklin in this fantasy landscape here at the tight end position specifically. So, moving on to the next game, Cincinnati hosting the Baltimore Ravens, and we've got another tight end here, Eric All Jr., Cincinnati tight end Eric All Jr. He is currently ranked as the tight end 30 in expert consensus rankings. And if you've watched just like 10 minutes of a Bengals game this season, you would hear on the broadcast how much they absolutely love rookie tight end Eric All Jr. I feel like that's all I ever hear on the Bengals broadcast, all I've ever heard on the Bengals broadcast this year. Well, at first it seemed to be all talk, but the rookie has 3 straight games now of seeing 4 targets, catching all 4 of those targets. So he's been involved in the offense, and in a PPR league, if he's getting you 4 points off just receptions, and I wrote this note before last night's game, so bear with me. But if you're coming from a Kyle Pitts manager, there's many things I'd be willing to do to get 4 points. So from my tight end. So granted, of course, Kyle Pitts gets significantly more than 4 points last night after I don't play him in the League of Extraordinary People. But that besides the point here, this is not a therapy session for me. He's got a matchup on deck against the Baltimore Ravens. Eric All Jr. does. And the Baltimore Ravens allowed the 3rd most PPR points to the position over their last 3 games. And this game has a high total, 50.5 points. Willing to take the shot on the rookie all this week. Moving on to the next matchup, it's the Miami Dolphins against the New England Patriots, and we're looking at New England running back Antonio Gibson, currently ranked as the ECR running back 35. The bye weeks are here, so that means we might have to start guys who typically we wouldn't feel comfortable putting in our lineups. Gibson saw 10 opportunities last week, which was the 2nd highest total of the season, and now Gerard Mayo, head coach Gerard Mayo, is talking about Gibson's possibly supplanting Ramondre Stevenson as the starting running back due to his issues with ball security. Now, I don't think Gibson will fully take the role over here. However, I do believe he'll see more opportunities, and that's just in time for a matchup against the Miami Dolphins, who have allowed the 4th most PPR points to the running back position over their last 3 games. I think Gibson is definitely a solid play this week, especially in PPR leagues. Moving on to the Buffalo Bills against the Houston Texans. And this game was a little tough to pick from. But I ultimately landed on Buffalo running back James Cook. He's the ECR running back 9, so you know which direction we're going with this one. If you take out his 3 touchdown game, he hasn't finished inside the top 10 of PPR running backs. Houston has allowed the 19th most PPR points to opposing running backs. So, they're relatively close to the middle of the pack. And as a defense, Houston has allowed the 3rd lowest target share to opposing running backs. So it could be a rough day in the passing game for Cook, who hasn't seen more than 11 rush attempts since their week 1 game when he saw 19. Obviously, he's got fantastic upside, so you're not going to bench him, but I would consider chasing some additional upside in my lineups. And it's quite highly possible that he does not finish inside that top 20 this week. Moving on to the next moving on to the next game here. We've got the Indianapolis Colts against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And a lot of times waiver wire guys end up on this list. And we've got another guy for you, and that's Indianapolis wide receiver Josh Downs. He's the ECR wide receiver 43. Coming off a top 12 finish at the position in week 4, now enters into a matchup here against the Jacksonville team that has allowed the 4th most PPR points to opposing wide receivers over their last 3 matchups. Downs matched Michael Pittman in targets, and granted, a lot of his production came once Flacco entered the game, but according to training camp reports, Downs was the top target for Richardson prior to suffering his injury in the summer. Looks like Richardson will play. However, there is that tiny chance that maybe Flacco does make the start, which would obviously then raise the floor here for Downs. But I like him either way. especially again in PPR leagues. Moving on to the next game, we've got the Cleveland Browns against the Washington Commanders. And I'm going with a guy who ends up being a regular on this list, but uh, Cleveland wide receiver Jerry Jeudy. He's the ECR wide receiver 36. I really, I really hate that I'm becoming like a champion for Jerry Jeudy right now. Like, it is what it is, but like when he was coming out in, I think it was 2020, I did not like, I preferred other wide receivers over Jerry Jeudy. Like I preferred CD Lamb. I preferred Justin Jefferson. Even at cost, I preferred Brandon Ayuk. So to me, to champion Jerry Jeudy after spending years like championing other players, other receivers ahead of him, it just kind of feels weird for me. But hey, I'm not biased when it comes to scoring fantasy points here. So Jeudy again has been a regular on this list. I think he deserves a bit more love, especially this week. He's finished inside the top 36 of wide receivers in 3 of 4 games this season, seeing no less than 6 targets in any game this season. And now he faces off against a Washington defense that has allowed the 3rd most PPR points to the position. Please get Jerry Jeudy in those lineups. If you're playing in those deeper leagues, you're playing in 12-team leagues, maybe you start 3 wide receivers. Jerry Jeudy deserves to be in those lineups for you this week. Moving on to the next matchup, and this one is one of those we got to watch out for because he did pop up on the injury report. But the Carolina Panthers taking on the Chicago Bears and going with Carolina running back Miles Sanders, who's the ECR running back 45. Again, bye weeks this week, we might have to go in a direction that we wouldn't typically go, especially in those deeper leagues. Sanders saw 10 opportunities last week, which matched a season high, including 4 targets as the Panthers faced a bit of a negative game script. The Panthers are underdogs in this one, so he could see some more pass game usage for Sanders again this week. There's an opportunity here for an RB3 finish. Again, not your standard, not your 10-team league or not your 2 running backs, 2 flexes. This is 12-team deeper leagues, 12 teams and up. These are your deeper leagues. You're looking for a flex play. Maybe you suffer some injury. Maybe, it's tough out there for running backs. So, that's where Miles Sanders comes in for me. Moving on to the next game, the Arizona Cardinals against the San Francisco 49ers. Again, this game was a tough one to choose from, but when I actually really looked at the numbers, it really wasn't that tough. San Francisco wide receiver Brandon Ayuk. And you guys, if you know me, you know anything about me, I love Ayuk. Got him right back there on my wall. Absolutely love that guy. However, he has not finished inside the top 40 at wide receiver all season. Not really in love with calling out his ranking here, but again, not particularly biased when it comes to scoring fantasy points. Outside of the one game where Deebo Samuel and Kittle were both out, and that was week 3 against the Rams, where he saw 10 targets, he hasn't seen more than 5 targets in any game this season. I'm sure his production will pick up as the season progresses, but I think we're at the point here with Ayuk where we need to see it first. And ideally, if this was a week that, if this was the week to expect a big performance, we would like a better matchup here. The Arizona Cardinals, they're not a fantastic matchup, but they're also not, a a bad one. They're like somewhere in closer to the tail end of wide receiver, allowing wide receiver production over their last 3 games. So for me, Ayuk is a guy that I kind of got to wait and see. There's a couple guys we'll talk about a little bit later who I'd rather play than Ayuk this week. I'd rather play Jerry Jeudy than Ayuk this week. I'd rather play Josh Downs than Ayuk this week. So just given again where he's finished, what he's done thus far this season, there's not a ton of confidence, not a ton of reasons to have much confidence in Ayuk going into this week 5 matchup. Moving on to the next guy on this list, that is in this Vegas Raiders versus Denver Broncos game. I'm going with Denver quarterback Bo Nix, ECR quarterback 25. Apparently, I just love putting Bo Nix on this list. But yes, he's on here again. And when he's faced a good matchup, he's been a high-end QB2. And this right here is a good matchup. Las Vegas allows the fifth most fantasy points to the quarterback position over their last 3 games. And so it's not out of the realm of possibility. Stay with me now. That Bo Nix finishes as a QB1. He's got that rushing floor. He's not afraid to use his legs, especially around the goal line. And so, again, when you look at this matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders, Bo Nix seems like a guy who, when you look at what he did against Tampa Bay, he was able to finish as the quarter. I believe it was the quarterback 13 when I went back and checked. I could have sworn it was quarterback 12 that week, but either way. And then you look even what he did against Seattle in Week 1, his first game in the NFL. He finished as a higher end QB2 or middle tier QB2. I think it was like QB16 or QB19, something like that, right? So if you're playing in 2 quarterback leagues, you're playing, maybe in a deeper 14, 16 team league, and you need help at the quarterback position this week. Maybe everyone in your league is rostering a couple. Bo Nix is a guy that I'm willing to throw out there against the Las Vegas Raiders in Week 5. Moving on to the next matchup here, it is the Green Bay Packers against the LA Rams. We've got 2 guys on this list. First guy is Los Angeles Rams wide receiver Jordan Whittington. He's the ECR wide receiver 48, coming off his best game of the season after seeing a season-high 8 targets. As I mentioned earlier in the week, Whittington coming off the game where he led the Rams in targets and receptions. He's the closest thing the Rams have right now to playing that Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua role. And he has a solid matchup against the Packers, who allow the 14th most PPR points to the wide receiver position. Love Whittington in PPR leagues, especially, this week, for as long as Cooper Kupp and or Puka Nacua are out. But the next guy also plays on the Rams, and that is LA Rams wide receiver Tutu Atwell. He's the ECR wide receiver 47. And it's funny because, a few weeks back, I was on, the Football Guys live stream with the GOAT Bob Harris, and I was like joking. I was like, hey, what does Tutu Atwell know about Sean McVay that we don't? What blackmail does he have? Or, why is it that Sean McVay just absolutely hates Tutu Atwell? Because every time Tutu's out on the field, I feel like he's making plays, right? He's, catching the long passes. He's, highly efficient in terms of his catch rate and getting the ball down the field. But for some reason, he doesn't play him. And now we've got back-to-back weeks of Tutu seeing at least 5 targets and 80-plus receiving yards and finishing inside the top 36 of wide receiver both times. So he's got a solid matchup here against the Packers. If you definitely need some help, going with Tutu Atwell. I mean, I'm going with Tutu Atwell over a guy like Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen has shown us relatively nothing through 4 weeks thus far. So yeah, Tutu Atwell, definitely a guy who will end up in some of my lineups this week. Moving on to the next game, that's the New York Giants against the Seattle Seahawks, and going with New York Giants wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson. He's the ECR wide receiver 35. Robinson has finished inside the top 36 every game this season, and last week he was the wide receiver 17 on the back of 14 targets. Neighbors is still in concussion protocol, so his availability is up in the air, probably as we record this now, looking like he's leaning towards being out. And so there's potentially an even bigger role here for Wan'Dale Robinson, who, again, has finished inside the top 36 every game this season and is ranked currently as the ECR wide receiver 35. So if we can just replicate a similar target distribution to last week, it's looking like Wan'Dale Robinson could finish inside that top 24 of wide receivers for us again this week. Moving on to the next game, the Dallas Cowboys against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And a guy I'm going after this week is new Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver George Pickens, I mean, once again, I'm finding a way to get Pickens on this list. He's been close to some big games, like really close to some big games. He had his first 100-yard game of the season last week. Still waiting for that elusive first touchdown of the season. Now he gets to face off against the Dallas Cowboys, who have allowed the 11th most PPR points to the wide receiver position through their last 3 games. We obviously know that their defense has suffered some injuries as well. No Micah Parsons, no DeMarcus Lawrence. So that's going to help, Justin Fields feel a little bit more comfortable there in the pocket. He's got to face a little bit less pressure than he normally would. And hopefully that helps him get the ball down the field to George Pickens, who has been productive. It's just like there's something missing there. It's those big games that he was getting us last year. The touchdowns that we were getting last year. We're just not getting those right now. But they're going to come, right? George Pickens is too good. He's too talented to not get that ball in the end zone. So would not be surprised if that big game comes this week. Moving on to the next matchup here, the last matchup, Monday Night Football, the New Orleans Saints against the Kansas City Chiefs. And going with Kansas City running back Kareem Hunt, he is the ECR running back 23. Now, Hunt crushed my soul last week when he took over for Steele as the workhorse in Kansas City after Steele fumbled, of course. But hey, some good things just come to an end. And now Hunt is operating as the main guy coming off a game where he saw 17 total touches and finished as the running back 28. If given a goal line opportunity or two, it could lead to a very productive day for Kareem Hunt. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe I saw something with Hunt come up yesterday in terms of an injury. Yeah, it popped up with an injury concern. Week 5 was limited on Thursday. So, we never like those, those midweek downgrades, but, something to definitely monitor there heading into Monday night. But just make sure you have a contingency plan in place, which is also another reason why you want to make sure that, the later a player plays, the more of a reason they should be in your flex, unless, you're not starting any other players at that actual position. So, you want to have Kareem Hunt in your flex unless you're starting, if you're in a 2 running back, 2 flex league. If you're starting 3 running backs and Kareem Hunt is one of those 3 and the other 2 play before Monday night at 8:15 p.m., then Kareem Hunt needs to be in your flex there, just so you have that flexibility just in case he does not play. You could pick up, a tight end, a wide receiver, another running back if need be to come in and put in that starting lineup there, so you wouldn't be forced to just play a running back. I feel like a lot of people, I'm surprised by how many people kind of forget this little caveat, but something that can definitely help you out in the future. So went on a little bit of a tangent there, but Kareem Hunt, yeah, the matchup is fine. Running backs, we like volume, so chase the volume there. But if he for some reason he can't go, I would expect Carson Steele and Samaje Perine to form some sort of a committee there at the running back position. That is all I have for the Week 5 matchup show, guys. Again, make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you're tapped in. If you are on social media, make sure you're giving the show a follow. Make sure you're giving me a follow. The show at FF Diagnostics on Instagram and X, and I'm at the real Jon J _FF on Instagram and X. Been dropping some Thursday night picks, as well as I drop my starts of the week on Instagram. Gonna again find a way to get those on X. Try to do that this week here with the starts of the week. So the Thursday night football picks, those drop every Thursday morning, and the starts of the week, they typically drop Friday evening. At the latest, it'll be Saturday morning, but they've been Friday evening, I think, with the exception of one of those videos there. So hopefully you guys enjoy the show. Again, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you tell your friends to subscribe, your family members to subscribe, your wife, your children, whoever you need to tell to subscribe to the show, especially on the YouTube. We're trying uh, to increase the subscribership there, specifically on YouTube. So definitely would appreciate if you guys can, do whatever you can to share the show and get more people as part of our fantastic community here at the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast. Have a great weekend, guys. Love and appreciate every single one of y'all. And we will talk to you guys on Tuesday. Peace.